At the time of writing, the new Star Fox game has only been out for a few days, but I've already put in over 20 hours, and I've probably played a good bit more since. That's an absurd amount for me, but it makes sense because I have been completely enthralled. That's despite the fact that I just played Star Fox 64 for the first time about a week ago, and I put in quite a bit of time into that game too. I had to pull myself away from Star Fox 26 in order to write this script. I have just been super motivated to keep going back, unlocking medals, discovering all routes, and re-experiencing each level in the appropriately named challenge mode. I have absolutely loved my time with the game, but I've seen a lot of negativity floating around that I think is going to dissipate pretty quickly. Don't get me wrong, if you're focused on the number of levels and their composition, it's completely reasonable to be disappointed in Star Fox 26. And to be clear, I would have loved a new route or even just a couple additional levels. But Valen Studios and Nintendo opted to expand how you interact with existing levels rather than adding more to the game. As such, a lot of this video is going to be contextualizing the new with the old, specifically how the developers improved and at times weakened the experience in comparison to Star Fox 64. One thing I think people underestimate is how a game's performance and wider field of view affect an on-rail shooter like Star Fox. 26 runs at a rock-solid 60 frames per second, at least during actual gameplay. The cutscenes run at 30 for some reason. This makes for a significantly faster, far more responsive game that involves faster-paced maneuvers from both players and enemies. The wider field of view also adds to this, providing more visibility and room to move around in, but also more distance to cover in a short amount of time, which is accounted for by the R-Wing moving faster across the screen than in 64. This can make it feel harder to control, but it also gives it more range. The developers knew this would be a factor, so they accounted for it in multiple other ways as well. Most enemies appear bigger on the screen, and projectiles are typically easier to avoid. This is particularly true for bosses, especially in the on-rail sections, and even more so for Gorgon in Area 6. The tentacles are easier to avoid, there is a lot more room to move around the missiles and drones, and the laser takes up much less of the screen and is therefore far less likely to catch you. I don't think I took damage from it a single time in 26, but in 64 it was a lot harder to dodge. All of this really changes and improves the game feel. 64 is amazing, but at times the controls feel like they're fighting against you simply because of the lower FPS and responsiveness. 26 is snappy and smooth. I might be portraying the game as much easier than 64, but the thing is that it's so responsive that you have to aim more carefully. The R-Wing will respond to the slightest input. This is particularly clear on Bullseye when trying to maintain fire on the arrays. Because you need to slightly tilt the thumbstick at any given time to maintain fire on the target, it becomes a real challenge to adjust for the rotation of the satellite being faster than the base speed of the R-Wing. This was the same in 64, but it was less pronounced due to lesser responsiveness. 26's visual changes are wide-ranging, yet somehow translate the original near perfectly. Enemies are far more detailed, and the clearly marked weak spots via consistent flashing animations are gone. They're replaced by design motifs that illustrate the target damage area. Enemies still glow and shine in their weak areas, but it's more organically implemented into their design. One thing that does take some getting used to is inflicting damage. In 64, it's clearly marked by the enemies flashing red, a universally effective feedback used in many games. In 26, it's a lot more subtle. Usually there's no animation feedback at all, though some do have it. Instead, projectiles have different impact animations that indicate whether damage is being dealt or not. Successful hits are typically indicated by little sparks flying off the impact site, though that also occurs when hitting heavy armor that prevents damage. But when that's the case, these enemies tend to have a more noticeable hit animation when landing on their weak spot. Really, the only exception to this is Volcane on Solar, which has a flashing and echoing animation when hit. Impervious shields will absorb the shots in a small circle. It takes some time, but you do get used to looking for these visual cues. On the player side, the UI and ship design are clearer and cleaner than ever before. No notes, it's just a huge improvement. The level design is identical to 64, and I mean identical. All enemy formations, terrain hazards, and bosses function exactly the same in both normal and expert difficulties. There is a genuine conversation to be had about whether this is a good or bad quality of the game. And I have to appreciate proper control options. In particular, the dedicated buttons for U-turns and somersaults are fantastic additions. Both felt very inconsistent for me in 64, but I do think that was more because of NSO and the fact that I was playing on a Switch Pro controller. Mouse mode is also a cool option, even if it does feel weird. I'm still getting used to it, but it could be the most precise way to play. Nintendo also opted to include co-op a la Mario Odyssey and Donkey Kong Bonanza, with the second player controlling the weapons while the first player pilots the R-Wing. Necessary? Not really, but it's nice that it exists. Shout out to my wife for testing this with me. Despite the common complaints, Star Fox 26 does have some substantial new content. It's just all within the bounds of the original levels. Challenge mode takes all stages, both normal and expert, and adds small objectives to each of them. Some are relatively easy, but others could almost be defined as skill-based puzzles. For example, beating Granga in 10 seconds on Corneria Expert requires a very specific set of inputs. It's more than just an execution check. You need to know exactly how to do it. There are 6 challenges per level and difficulty, which makes for a huge amount of content considering they all use the original levels and their original design. Then there's the multiplayer, which might be a bit of a sleeper hit. I usually don't care for multiplayer modes, but 26's is surprisingly fun. It's PvPvE, in that you're fighting both enemy players and NPCs. There are only 3 maps so far. Corneria is a King of the Hill game mode. I honestly didn't expect it to work so well in the dogfighting genre. Ficina is a collectathon effectively. This is the least fun map in my opinion, but I didn't get to try it as much as the other 2. It's random when queuing for online play, so I had to try it with bots at first. Sector Y was easily the best map with Capture the Flag. It felt like the perfect balance of map space, PvP, and PvE. There are a bunch of temporary upgrades that are really fun to use, especially the Mega Laser. All game modes are rewarded by a ton of unlockables. It doesn't seem like a lot on paper: avatars and custom headwear, holoviewer entries, and nameplate customization options. But anyone who wants to unlock them all is going to have to get real good at the game, along with spending a decent amount of time. I'm over 20 hours in and have a long way to go. So now let's talk about the story. Star Fox 64 has a simple story and tells it effectively enough, but Star Fox 26 improves the experience a lot. The new cutscenes are all extremely well done. Character models are expressive, the animations are fantastic, and the voice acting really is unmatched in a first-party Nintendo game. There's a lot of character building here. Fox has an attitude that didn't really exist in 64, but fits much better with his role as a mercenary. He's confident and a bit arrogant, more in line with his characterization in Star Fox Adventures. I'm not sure about any of the other games, but in 64, Fox is more of a soldier. There is a lot of yes sirs and valiant posturing. In fact, the only thing that jumps out as mercenary in 64 is the invoice, which is back of course. The only complaint I've seen, and one I definitely agree with, involves the bosses. They're not quite as expressive or campy, which loses a bit of the charm. The main cast also isn't as campy, but while it makes the bosses less memorable, it works with the Star Fox team because you see so much more of them. It's an appropriate trade-off. The game wants you to take them more seriously and presents them as such. Not to say there aren't plenty of funny moments, though.
Nice little flock you've got here, Lombardi.
The interior of the Great Fox is a strong staging point. It's got a beautiful map and an awesome command center, both for mission coordination and just hanging out. It even has a mini fridge and soda. I like that. But most of all, the cutscenes add a lot of context to what is happening, which wasn't present in the original. Star Fox team discusses the planets they visit and the importance of each mission. Changing your route is always framed as a decision, sacrificing one objective for another. There's genuine discussion about whether they should even go to certain locations like Solar and Aquas. There are actual tense and stressful moments fueled by excellent voice acting. Even the tutorial is contextualized, and all of this is further supported by the in-mission dialogue. And the secret section at the end of the hard route is a vast improvement over the original, and it was already pretty iconic. To top it off is the holoviewer, which adds far more detailed information than ever before. Character bios are fleshed out with even more context, like the fact that Andrew of Starwolf is a relative of Andros and is a bit of a nepo baby, which is why the team treats him with less respect. The only reason he's there is his money and his connection to Uncle Andros. The point is, there is a huge amount of lore to unlock and read about, probably the most valuable part of the game's rewards. The overall presentation is also an appropriate successor to 64, which was already groundbreaking for its time. The levels are reimagined in fantastic form. The lighting on Solar is utterly striking. Corneria City not only looks like a proper city, but also looks like a proper war zone. The different sectors are beautiful. They were always meant to look like a nebula, which in and of itself doesn't really make sense, but it is certainly achieved in 26. The warp is a perfect translation of cosmic wonder. Zone S is pretty interesting. If you didn't read the original level description, you might not realize that Zone S is supposed to be heavily polluted. 26 makes it very, very clear with murky, trash-filled waters and industrial infrastructure scattered about. I was already impressed with both the original Star Fox on the SNES and 64 in their depictions of space battles, but 26 of course fully realizes each battle in stunning, vivid detail and spectacle. Aquas is darker and freakier than ever, which I think is particularly notable because a lot of times remakes like this get this type of lighting wrong. I'm reminded of Halo Anniversary in levels like 343 Guilty Spark in the library, and even the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time 3D. Intentionally or not, the developers lighten up the environments to display new visuals, which hurts the theming. This is not the case in Star Fox 26. Aquas is actually darker in 26, relying heavier on lighting the way with torpedoes. In fact, there's only one area that I think did not translate well, and that's Andross's arena. In 64, it's a void, and when you see his true form, it becomes even more of a void, like another dimension. But in 26, it's the core of his facility, and honestly, that might have been the original intention, perhaps limited by hardware for some reason, but it loses an element of cosmic horror. Andross is kinda eldritch coded, and the void contributed to that a lot. I would have preferred they maintain the void rather than include the core. Other aspects of the game's presentation are strict improvements. The main menu being in the Great Fox's command center was a neat touch. The score screen after each level is very welcome, especially the status of the R-Wing on the side. I like that a lot. The credits are perfect. It's an actual scene that add to all of their characters, a really great adaptation of the original. And I also appreciate how they only show with the true ending to really drive home that Venom 1 is not the end of the story. Star Fox 64 is like playing a movie, but Star Fox 26 is absolute cinema. It's a quality remake. It's incredibly faithful while improving on the original. Skill is rewarded by unlockables, and let's be honest here, in another world, these would be microtransactions. It has amazing visuals with proper scale. Presumably, it had a pretty reasonable development budget due to the limited scope of the game. Nintendo has always been this way. They prioritize aesthetic cohesion over graphical fidelity, and they push unique art styles. Unless you're going the route of Final Fantasy VII and completely reimagining the entire game, I think keeping the scale in control is the correct way to go. It makes me wonder which direction they'll go with the Ocarina of Time remake. Speaking of which, I really hope Nintendo makes more Star Fox in the near future, but I have to admit, I'm worried 26 is more of an echo of previous releases. Ocarina of Time is coming, so therefore so must Star Fox 64. The two are inextricably linked. Despite that worry, I'm hopeful this will lead to a true continuation of the series with this art style. I really like it. Side note, my Star Fox Adventures video released about a year ago now, and at the time it was the only game in the series I had ever played, and I discussed a plot twist of Andross being the final boss. I wondered if there was some lore establishing it as a possibility, but I now know that there was not. It was a token decision that actually hurt the overall experience. I still love the game, but a proper sequel that expands the story would be very welcome. Again, I've never played any other Star Fox games like Assault or Command, so it's possible this already exists. Star Fox 26 is an example of good development mindset. As unpopular as it is to appreciate Nintendo on the internet, they don't fall into the trap of massive games with crazy graphics, leading to ballooning development cycles and budgets. And Velan Studios did an amazing job recreating an all-time classic. And as other publishers are closing studios and laying off workers, Nintendo is raising salaries. Star Fox 2026 is a remake done right, faithful to the original, a full realization with visuals, music, and story, and all without breaking the bank. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Let me know if you plan to try the new Star Fox game in the comments, and please consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed this. I've also opened YouTube memberships if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching.